Welcome back, guys. This is Israel. Today we're going to be adding Google Pay to our Angular application. Not only how to just add the button and check out and then pay with a test card, obviously, but also how to add addresses, shipping, taxes, and all that good stuff to your Google Pay pop-up. And now let's get into it. But first, I want to give a shout out to all my channel members. If you guys want to see your names here, as well as get access to all the code from all my videos, click the link in the description or the join button, then send an email to this email with the code that you want access to. But now, onto the code. Alright guys, so we are now at the project. This is a Angular 19 application I've used in previous videos, I think in the updates for Angular 19 as well as MCell. Currently, we have a login page, main page, Angular material, mock data, and then just everything else I think is pretty empty. This is it running right now. This was for the MCell video, like I said, but now let's change this up and add in Google Pay into our Angular application. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to actually npm install the Google Pay for Angular. So it's going to be something like this. So you can go here. So you can go to the npm for the button Angular, and it is going to be this. So npm install at Google Pay /button Angular. So you can take that and now go in here and you can npm install that. And I'll be right back once it's done. So now that that's finished installing, I'm going to create a few things. So I'm going to go into my app, and then I'm going to generate a new component called Google Pay. So ng generate component, and we're just going to call it Google Pay. So now that we've generated that component, we can see that we have it here. I'm also going to add a few other things. In my app, I'm going to add a new folder called services. And now inside of the Google Pay folder, I'm also going to create a new component called confirmation page. This is going to be, once we finish the process of paying, we're going to route to that confirmation page and be like, hey, so you successfully bought this given item. So in here, we're going to do Google Pay. So ng generate component confirmation page and enter. So now your layout should look something like this. You should have your Google Pay folder with a confirmation page component in here and a Google Pay component in here. And you should have this services folder right here. So now let's actually go and start adding things in to our Google Pay component. So I'm going to go to my Google Pay component and I'm going to change what we have in here. So, and it's going to look something like this. So at the top here, I have just some custom styling called container. We're going to have a header that says welcome. We're just going to have a basic little thing that says click the button below to pay now. And then right here, we are going to have an image of some sneakers that I've always liked. And then we are going to have add shoes to cart and a button that says add shoes to cart. And then once you actually add something into the cart, and I'll show you guys the actual TypeScript code in a second, we show the Google button, which is right here. So you have Google Pay button right here, this tag. Environment is test because we are testing. We're not actually using our real information. Button type buy. Button size mode equals fill. So it fills the space. Button color is going to be black. Button size mode static. And then here, we're going to have a few methods and callbacks. These all need to be here, and you will see errors in the future if you don't have the proper callbacks for the different events that the Google Pay pop-up shows. You need to be able to capture all of them and handle them in your methods, and I'll show you guys the methods in a second. So here we're going to have the payment request object. This is like the main object that binds to the pop-up, and we'll see that object in a second. So when you load your payment data, you have an event that triggers. On error, we're going to have a method there. Then when your payment is authorized, we're going to have a callback here. And also when the payment data change callback is triggered. And I'll talk about these methods all in a second when I get to the TypeScript. But before we go any further, let's talk about the Google Pay button and what actually Google Pay is. And this is something that I used to think, and maybe some of you also think, and that is, oh, Google Pay is actually doing the payment. It actually fulfills, it runs your card, it charges you for the thing, and it handles all of that. Well, actually, no. In this case, all that the Google Pay button is really good for, it's for quickly getting a customer, a user's information very quick. And why is that? Because on your Google account, the majority of you, included myself, we have what? Our card information, we have our address, we have our personal information, our email, things of that nature are already tied to our Google account. So when it comes to actually checking out, what do you need? Your card information and where you live. And that can easily be grabbed from your Google account and populated and then sent off to your API. And then on your API, you would actually process the card and execute the transaction using Stripe or some other service like that. But I just wanted to clear it up and just kind of say that Google Pay, really all it is an easy way to quickly get information from people without having to ask the person checking out to put their email, to put their name, to put where they live, to put their card information. It's so you can quickly grab all that information and send it to your API where you can actually process the order and complete the process of paying. And with that just cleared up, I just really want to make that clear so that none of you kind of come in here thinking, oh, Google Pay is going to also handle the card and all that information. No, that's going to go to your API and then that's where it's going to be processed. But now let's continue on with the rest of this code. But I hope that that cleared up any questions you might have about what the actual extent of the functionality of Google Pay may be. And I have a video on Stripe that should also pop up here somewhere in case you guys are interested on doing that. But now let's continue. And then once you get past this Google Pay button, which I, again, repeat, I'm going to explain these methods in a second. Right here, we're just going to be looping through the list of items that I add to cart, quote unquote. But really, it's just going to be one because we're only going to have one item, which is going to be the sneakers. And once you click this, it adds an item to here. And then it also shows the Google Pay button so that you can actually pay for your item, because if we have no items in your cart, what are you paying for, right? And I'll show you guys the HTML once we actually generate this. But now let's go ahead and get the image for the sneakers because that needs to go into assets. Assets, and then we're just going to drag this. So these are the pair of sneakers, just to show them again right there. So that's the image that we want to show, and this is what we're buying in our sample Google Pay mini store. So that's what we need. So this is found correctly. You should now see it right here as well. So if we open that, we should be able to see the image. So cool. So now, obviously, all these methods need to be implemented. So now let's go to our TypeScript file, and let's add in everything in here. The first thing I'm going to do in my TypeScript file is I want to create an interface called item. This is going to be for the sneakers so we can have the name of the sneaker as well as its price. So that's what's going to go here. I'm going to also bring in a few of these other libraries. So we're going to need the Angular mat button. We're going to need a router. We're going to need obviously the Google Pay module. And then we're also going to need this payment service, which is going to be the service that we create in here in a second. So now let's move down here. Next thing, we're going to need to import these two modules. And now we're good here. And now let's actually go into the component code and I'll talk you guys through every single thing that's in here. So let's paste this in. First of all, we have this Boolean show Google Pay that's tied to here. So essentially once we add something into our cart, we have something that we can actually buy. So at that point, we actually show the Google Pay button. Next, this item list is just going to be the list of items. When we add the shoes, it's going to go into like our cart. So that's the list that we're going to have here. So now we're at our constructor. In our constructor, we're going to have this router that's going to route to the confirmation page when we get there. And then we have this payment service, which again, we haven't created. But in here, we're going to have a lot of different logic, but I'm going to really walk you guys through everything that goes in here to make it very clear what you guys should be really doing on the UI side when it comes to Google Pay and what in the real world would actually go to your API and is handled there. But we'll talk about that when we get there. But now let's continue. So the next thing that you need is you're going to need this payment request object. This is the object that's going to be basically binded to the Google Pay pop-up that we'll see a little bit later. But like it says here, it said it contains several options to describe what information is being requested and how it will be transferred. And we're going to see what all that information is in a second in our ng on init. So let's copy that method over and I'll walk you guys through what this payment request object looks like and why the Google pop-up needs all of this information. But also I want to say to just pay close attention to these because I know they're long, but they are very key and Google Pay needs these clearly defined so that it can bind them correctly to its UI. So pay close attention. You can't really get away with just using any here. It needs to be these. So with that being said, in our ng on init, so just API versions here in this object, we are going to say the allowed payment methods. So we just put all of this information here. So we're allowing all these cards. In here is your tokenization specification. In here, if you were a real business doing this for like production setting, you would register your account with like Google Business or something of that nature, and you would have this information so that it would actually then be able to connect to your store through Google and be able to validate that token and all of that stuff. So that's what would go here. But obviously we're doing the test version like I specified here. So we just have an example gateway. And then down here we have again demo merchant info. So again, We have nothing real here. If you were a real merchant, you would have real information to fill in here, and all of that would come from Google Business. Then down here, we have the transaction info. This object right here essentially says what is the price that we're paying, what is the shipping, the taxes, and all of that stuff. And we're going to see it in a little bit when we actually implement this service. Here, we're saying that we want the shipping address. We need shipping options. So this could be shipping options as like, it could be free and you don't pay anything and it takes 5 to 7 business days. Or it could take 2 business days, but you have to pay $10 or something like that. So you have to give it those values, as well as you need to have a shipping address. So this would be like your home address. And then you give it the shipping option parameters. So this is like what I just mentioned. So this could be like 2 to 5 business days and it's $5, 1 day, $20, stuff like that. And I'll show you guys what happens in a little bit, but I just want to explain what each one of these mean and why they're here, and that they're not just here for decoration. They don't mean anything. But with that being said, you need to also have your callbacks. So these callbacks are going to be the methods that are triggered when certain things happen. So when your payment is authorized, we're going to call the method that goes with this. When we change the shipping address, we're going to have to update the shipping information. Or when we change the shipping option, the shipping information changes, as well as the total price of the item could possibly change. But that is this whole object, and this is the key that, like I said, binds to essentially the Google pop-up and changes everything and handles all the events. So this needs to be set, and you need to make sure that you have all the methods, especially the callbacks needed. If not, you're going to be seeing a few errors. But now let's continue. So the first method that we're going to have is going to be this onload payment data. So what happens in here is this is essentially once you actually click the final like pay or purchase or buy button on the Google pop-up now. So this is like the final thing that you would do once you have all your information in there. What this does is it grabs the payment information. So it grabs the card information of the user and everything else from the pop-up. And then what you would do here in the real world is you would grab that information as well as what the user's buying, and you would ship that off to your API. In your API, you would process the card, calculate everything, run the card, buy the item, update your database, and then do all of that. And then the UI here would just receive a, did it pass, success or not success. And then what we're doing here is we're routing to our confirmation page where it would say like, thank you for purchasing from this store. You'd get your receipt, check your email for the receipt, or blah, 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 things like that. But essentially, here's where we're processing the payment. But like I wanted to reiterate, Google Pay does not actually process the card. You would, in the real world, send this information off to your API. Your API would process the card, complete the checkout, and then you would just receive kind of, hey, did it work or not? And you would just handle the UI accordingly. But that's what happens in this onload payment data. So this is like the final method that would be called, but we'll see it whenever we actually run the test. Let's go to our first callback function, and it's going to be this one. So this callback function is going to be on payment data changed. So when does this callback function get called? Essentially, on payment data changed is called right here. So when payment data change callback, call this function. So essentially, anytime that anything in the pop-up is changed, whether you change your card that you're choosing, whether you change the shipping address, whether you change the shipping option, all of those will trigger this, because essentially you have to re-update this underlying object right here with the actual information of the price, of the shipping, of the taxes, and you have to recalculate it every time. So that's when this is going to be called, and you guys will see this when we actually test this, exactly what's going on in here. But essentially, this gets called, we're going to have the updates, and that's going to be all the information, like I said, shipping, taxes, the item that you're buying. And then in here, we would calculate the new transaction info. So we're going to pass the item, the shipping address, and then the shipping option. And then we would recalculate all the numbers, send that back here, and then rebind that to our Google Pay pop-up. And we'll see that in action when we actually run that. And now let's go to our next one. The next method is on payment authorized. This method is going to be called essentially when you change card. So whenever you have your first card and you click it and you select a different card, like you don't want to use your debit card, you want to use your credit card, you should, in a real world scenario, go verify that that's a valid card with valid information. And then if so, if your API says yes, then you return with it's good. And then you would bind that again to the Google Pay button and you would say it's fine. Then we're going to have our on error. So essentially any error that happens, we're capturing it here and we're printing it out, just so you know. And then we finally get to our add shoes to cart method. So essentially this one is just this method right here, where we are going to click the button under the picture of the shoes because we want to buy these shoes. And what we're going to do there is we're going to basically add them to our item list, which is our cart in this scenario. And then we're going to show the Google Pay button. And then that's where our button will actually show. And now we can, quote unquote, buy it. But now we still have a few errors here. We need our payment service. And this is going to, like I said, mock kind of what you would do from your UI side to then call your API and then receive responses. So we're sort of going to mock that in here. So to actually create this payment service, we're going to right click on services. And then we're going to do ng generate service, and we're going to call it payment and press enter. Now we should have something like this, payment service. So now we should be able to find a payment service. Cool, it's found. So now let's fill this out. The first thing that we're going to have at the top of our payment service is going to be this list right here. This is going to be our shipping options. So this is what I was talking about earlier when I mentioned that you are going to be having, where are the shipping options? Here, that we're going to have shipping options and get shipping options right here. This is going to be this list of information. Ideally, you would probably want these to be in your database somewhere so that then you would pull these from the API. So you would have some endpoint that goes to the API, gets the shipping options and sends them back. So you could dynamically, obviously update them in the future as maybe your business explodes or whatever it may be, and you can offer better prices or you offer more options here. But for our example, we're just going to have these basic options. So it's free. The ID is going to be free. Labels, free shipping, arrives in 5 to 7 days, and the price is $0. Or you can have express, where it arrives in 2 to 3 days, and you're going to cost $10. So that's our shipping options. Next, we're going to move on to our tax rate. So I just kind of I Googled it for Texas, which is where I live, and we're just going to use this tax rate for now. Then our first thing is going to be our process payment method here. Essentially in this method, this process payment, if I can go back, is going to be the method right here. So this is what I was saying, whenever you would send in your items and you would send your card data and then your API would process the payment, actually purchase the item, update your database, all that would happen. So you would do that at this step, but we're not doing the API here. So we're just going to this method. So we're calling it. And then basically I'm just doing, we bought these items, the payment was successful, and then we would come back and now send us to our confirmation page. You bought the items. Congrats. Here's your receipt in your email, blah, 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 blah. So that's what this method is for. And now the next one is going to be the get transaction info. So get transaction info is going to be the longest method that we have. And I'll walk you guys through what all is going on in here. But essentially this method and everything that goes on inside of it, I believe that probably in a production setting, you'd probably want to do all this logic, calculating the subtotal, shipping, taxes, the final price. You'd probably want to do this on the API, but I just want to show you guys the logic that would go in there. And I guess if you wanted to do it on the UI, you could do it this way as well. But this get transaction info is what is called here on payment data change, which is the method that I said that whenever you change the shipping address, the card that you're using, your shipping option that you selected, you need to refresh at, the Google Pay little pop-up with the correct price and the correct information. So you need to bind the new information to this object. So essentially what we're doing in here is we're receiving the items that we're buying. We have the address of the person, so whatever they select from the dropdown. Then here we're going to have the selected option. So it's going to pass in the ID of whatever they select here. So it'll pass either one of these, and then that's how we'll know what to bind it to and what price to charge as well. So now we have the display items list. In this list are going to go our subtotal, our shipping, our taxes, and our final. Make sure that you use the correct interfaces here and that you have this correct structure. Google Pay needs you to have it exactly a certain way. You cannot get cute with it. Otherwise, the Google Pay pop-up won't work correctly and it's just going to keep crashing or get stuck. So make sure that you're using the exact interfaces that you need and have the correct structure. Next thing here, this if statement basically is checking if we don't have any items in the list. This could be on star, or we just removed all our items or something happened. We basically just have 0 as the correct item and we just return that. But now let's get to the fun part. The fun part is saying we have an item in our list that we're trying to buy. In my case, we only have one pair of shoes that we can buy. So I'm cheating a little bit, but ideally you would want to have some type of for loop that would calculate all these values and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going and getting the price of the shoes. And then the subtotal would initially be just the price of the shoes because we only have one item. So the subtotal, the price here has to be string, by the way, so you can't just give it numbers. So we're going to grab the price of the shoes and send it to our subtotal, type subtotal. And we're going to push that into our display items list. So that goes in here. Next, we now go into our shipping options, which was this object up here. And we take whatever item that we get from this passed in object here, and we go and find that object and we return it. So we return it here, and then we take that shipping option price and we also push that in. Good. Now we have the tax object. The tax object is essentially going to be that tax rate that I said earlier. We just have to shove that in here. And now the final math problem is going to be actually calculating the total price of your item. So you're going to calculate it by taking the total up until this point, which is basically just a subtotal, timesing it by the tax rate, and then we're going to add our total item again, because this will be just like a smaller number because this is a percentage of the total. We add that to our total that we had, to our subtotal, plus the shipping price, and then that gives us our total. And then we have one final object to set, and that's going to be, we give all these information here. So all of these, the subtotal, shipping, and tax, go right here into display items. Then we have our total price. We say that it's final, the total, and then we say the current currency. And once we do that, we return all that information, and that's how you update the price, the shipping, everything that's going on. This method is calculating that. Like I said, you'd probably want to offload this to your API, but for our example, we have it right here. And then we have one final method called get shipping options. And this method is going to be called right here, where you want the shipping options to actually show in the dropdown in the Google Pay pop-up. It's going to grab them from here. It's going to set the default shipping to be free. So it'll show free as the default. And then you'll just bind all this information there. You don't need to bind price. I don't think price is a shipping options parameter. So you just need these three right here. So with this method being done, I think that's all the code that we needed to add for Google Pay. I think the last thing that I need to do is just change some routing in here because we have not added these new components to our project. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to do this. Let me comment this one out. And we have our Google Pay component. And then actually, before I forget, we do need to add something in for the confirmation page component. So let me go ahead, and I believe there's not much on the confirmation page. We just have a cute little message for when you buy your item, and it's gonna say you bought the thing. So if we see everybody, you bought the thing once we finish paying, that means that we successfully were able to hit this method and route to our confirmation page because we bought the thing. But now let's actually test and make sure that Google Pay is working like we want it to. But right before we do that, if you guys have found this video helpful, please drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the other amazing content that I have for you guys. But now let's see if this works. So let's run an ng serve. So we see that we have welcome, click the button to pay now. We have the shoes and we have the add shoes to cart button. So let me open up the inspect as well because we do have debuggers everywhere. And I want to show you guys how this runs. So in here, we can see that we have this add shoes to cart. That is this button. Then we have our image. Like I said, again, is this. So now let's actually click add shoes to cart. We can see in our debugger, we're hitting the add shoes to cart method. We're going to add them and now show the Google Pay button. And now voila, pay with Google Pay has appeared. Oh my God, this is amazing. And then right here, we have KD and Pro 4s 150. And that is this right here, which is basically showing the item and the price of what we've added to our cart. But now that we have this, let's actually move on to the Google Pay pop-up that I've talked about so much. Let me show you guys what happens. And we should have enough debuggers everywhere so that you guys can see what happened. So this sometimes takes a little bit to load. If this is your first time using it as well, you might be asked to sign in, but that's how you sign into any of your Google accounts. So as we can see, this is loading and we already had on payment data changed hit. So on payment data change is the one that I said whenever you change any of your shipping information, your card, your shipping address, this callback is triggered. So as we can see here, we have this payment data request update. It's callback on initialize. We have the country code. So this is like the default test address. And then we have the shipping is free because remember I said that for our shipping options, we have default is the free shipping. So let's move on. We should be able to go into our get transaction service and pass in all our variables. So going in here on initialize, we see that we have no items. Well, we have one item actually. So we actually have to calculate for the default. So in here, we're going to skip the default. And now we get to calculate for, we have the default address. And then we also have the free shipping option. So now we have to calculate the price, the shipping, everything. So let's go through here. So we would obviously have 150 as our first price. So that would go into subtotal. We push that in. Then we find our shipping option object, and that gets back here. Then we get arrives in 5 to 7 days, free shipping. We go through here. We now add that to our display item list. So now we see we have subtotal, and we have our shipping, which is 0. Now we're going to have our tax object, which is going to go in here. So now we have taxes, shipping, subtotal. All of that goes into display items. And now we actually calculate our total, which here should be 150 plus like $9 or something for our total. So this is what the sneakers would cost if we did free shipping plus the sneaker price plus taxes. It would be $159 and 38 cents. And now we add all that information into here and we press play. So this will return now and be bounded here. So as we can see, this has all that information in it. So we have our test card. We have that California address that you saw by default. We have our free shipping, guys. And then we can see that we have the correct price here. But now let's start playing around with the amazing pop-up that I've mentioned this whole video. So as we can see here, this is the famous Google Pay pop-up that I've been mentioning the whole video. We can see that we have our card, our test card, that test shipping address, and we have the shipping option that is by default selected, which is free shipping. And we can see that we have the proper payment here. So here you have all the different types of test cards, which are the ones that you declare right here. So when you say these are the types of cards you can use right here. And then once this is done, actually, I just clicked out of it. Let me get back there again, guys. So now these are obviously all the test cards that you can use that, like I said, that you declare here. So MasterCard, Visa, Amex, Discover. So those are all the ones that are here for our testing purposes. So we're just going to select the test Visa. For shipping, you would have all these tests, or you can add, let's say, your shipping. And obviously, if this was your Google account and this wasn't test, you would have your addresses here. So let's say we click Australian user. So now what's happened is we're back in our debugger. So we've again hit on payment data changed. In our case, this isn't going to change much. But again, if this was real, this would go to your API and you would say, oh, this is outside our country. This is Australia. So we need to add $20 more of shipping because it's like, you know, overseas shipping or something of that nature. So you would have to take that into account. But in our example, it's not going to change anything because the shipping is still the free shipping option. But in other cases, in the real world, you would see this and be like, oh, this is, you know, across the world. We need to add $20 regardless of whatever shipping they select. Or you might want to auto select the shipping for them and be like, you actually only have one option, and that's this overseas $30 shipping or something of that nature. So now we have this selected, and now let's say we want to change the shipping. So right now we have the payment as obviously $159, but let's say we change this, we would expect it to go up $10, right? Because we're clicking express shipping. So these are the two shipping options. We click it. We are back in on payment changed. Let's go back into our method. So all this would be the same, but now we get to shipping options. We see that we find the correct shipping option of $10 because we passed in our ID of, I believe, in here is Express. The ID is Express, and obviously the ID of Express is Express shipping. So we get the actual object here, and then the price is now going to be 10. So we go down here, and now when we calculate, we actually have 10 here for the shipping option price. So now the total price will be $169. $169. We press here, we close it, and now we have $169 right here as the actual price because we're doing express shipping of $10. And now let's see if we can actually buy this item. Now that I've showed you guys here, we press continue. So on payment authorized, this is where we would check, hey, is everything good? Is the card valid? The shipping valid? Everything. This is where you would double, triple check that everything in the transaction is good. If so, you go and press play, and then you would process your payment. So now it would call on load payment data. This is what I said was the final method. This is the one where you're gonna pay now. So now here in your process payment, this is where you go to your API, pass in the items that you're buying, the card information of the user, and all of that stuff. Actually process and check out using Stripe or some other third-party library of that nature to actually process the payment. And then you would come back here, say yes or no, and then you would route to your confirmation page. And in our case, we bought the thing. And that's how you actually add Google Pay to your Angular application. But that's how easy it is, guys, to add Google Pay to your Angular application. And if you also want to learn about Stripe, click on this video right here to go learn a little bit more.